Welcome to the Sacred Arts channel, where we discuss all things from the practical to the sacred. Today, I'm very excited to speak to Madhu Das. Madhu lived and trained for half a decade as a monk in the Bhakti Yoga tradition. During these years, he traveled extensively, studying Vedic arts and sciences under renowned teachers. He is a holistic health and business lifestyle coach who has trained hundreds of health and wellness professionals, coaches, and influencers in ancient sciences and helps them create 6 and 7 figure online businesses. Welcome, Madhu.
Oh, I'm so grateful to be here.
Thank you. I just want to get right to it. So very curious as to what drew you to the Bhakti yoga tradition, and then what led you to the moment of wanting to lead a monastic life.
Yeah, you're telling me that most 18-year-old boys on their birthday, they don't want to shave their head and become a celibate monk and anything? It's
Not from my
definitely
experience.
unusual. Yeah. Yeah, well, the short answer is that I had always been interested in philosophy and theology growing up. Not always, but at least into my teen years. And I had been faced with this answer to most of my questions often, and that was, don't ask so many questions. You ask too many questions. Like, you don't have to have all the, and I'm like, no, I want answers. And so after studying a lot of what I had accessible, which was mostly like Western philosophy and a few theological practices that were around, which were primarily Abrahamic practices, which out of the pool of philosophy theology was just kind of a small portion. I was always feeling like, I want more, I want more. And when I was 16, believe it or not, my father actually said, I'll give you $100 to read the Bhagavad Gita, which is the one of the oldest written literatures in the world, and teaching the tenets of real yoga, not to be taken with the physical asana yoga practice that most of us in the West relate yoga to. Big fan of that too, but the actual linking meditation process of yoga. And I read that, and my mind was just like, was totally blown. And I started to go really deep into these ancient wisdom literatures from the East, which are called the Vedas or the Vedic literature. And as I started studying them, finally, the first time in my life, the people who were helping answer my questions, they seemingly had an answer for everything. No one told me, you just have to have faith, or but you don't need to know that answer. Whatever the kid, everyone's like, yeah, we got it. Whatever. And even if they didn't know, they had like a place to go to find that information. They're like, oh, well, let's just go to, this one literature called the Srimad Bhagavatam, and let's go to the third canto section, chapter 2. And I was just like, who are these people? like what? And I was so intrigued to study under these people who were educated in the Bhakti Yoga tradition, which Bhakti literally is just a Sanskrit word that means loving devotion or devotional service. And yoga meaning literally to connect. We still have the same word in English because English comes from Sanskrit, yoke, or to link. Yoke becomes huge yoga. Anyway, without getting too nerdy, but the idea is Bhakti Yoga is connecting to divinity through love and devotion. And as I started to study those ancient philosophical texts, I was like, all right, there's something in here. And then before I knew it, I was hooked.
I find that really interesting because, at 18, I feel like we're so ingrained into our society and we're wanting to please everyone and trying to find our way. So, I mean, I know that it started with your dad, giving you $100 to read the Bhagavad Gita. I can never say it, but it's such a great, I read it in college. That's what got me hooked as well. Um, I guess my question would be like, how are you able to separate yourself from like the everyday wanting to please society and what your friends are expecting you to do to actually going into that path?
There's a beautiful word I'd like to use to respond. And this word is such a powerful motivator to incline people to do things that they otherwise didn't find themselves to be able to do. And that magical word that 100% of us listening to can relate with is suffering. I, life is just difficult. And I had a pretty blessed upbringing comparatively. If I look at the other most of the population, the other 8 billion or so souls in this world, objectively, I've been very blessed in many ways. I mean, we never went with, but I never went without. That's the way I like to say it. My parents always made sure, I always had some food, always had the basics, etc. And still, forgive me, shit was hard. It was like, it was tough. And so my whole internal motivation was, how do I stop suffering this way? Like, how can I just get some relief? And I noticed everyone around me was, the methods of relief they were going to were temporary, which is very dissatisfying. And I tried different drugs, intoxications, things that would numb me from my suffering. But then guess what happens? You come right back. Oh, there it is. Thing never disappeared. I just put a little toxin in my brain so I couldn't see the thing. And then, oh, there it is. Put a little more toxin. And it was like putting a Band-Aid on the issue instead of actually healing the wound. So I was so dissatisfied with all of these different types of addictions that were covering the suffering. And I mean, for better or for worse, I tried them, but didn't like them. And so I always had this desire, how can I actually free myself from suffering? And reading these different ancient yoga literatures, I mean, and even some newer literatures that talk about this, because whatever language you put truth in, it's still truth. And, I got the sense that, okay, my relating my senses to their sense objects. In other words, my eyes to things that are very beautiful form, ears to things that sound very good, my tongue to things that taste so good. All of these sensual addictions, my attachment to them is actually what is binding me to either happiness or distress. And that at that point, I was like, okay, I just want to hit the restart button. I want to hit I want to redo. I don't want to be attached to all these things. I want to be separated from that. And that's why on my 18th birthday, which I would have moved sooner, but they wouldn't let me as a 17-year-old because I was a minor. I shaved my head and put on orange robes and started to live a simple life of a monk, waking up at 3:30 in the morning, do multiple hours of personal meditation as well as group meditations, do various classes, spend the rest of your day. You eat a little too, don't good amount of eating. That's how you keep a monk. You make sure they're well fed, but it's still very clean food. And then spend your day just serving, anything from going to college campuses to teach meditation to whatever individual services were. And then you go to bed and you do it over. And I did that for about 5 years. And so, I I thought I'd answer in short, but really the bite-sized version is that I knew this wasn't providing me happiness and satisfaction, it's suffering. And so I wanted some relief from it. So inevitably I knew the primary thing was just to create that space from it. And then lo and behold, in my desire to free myself from suffering, I actually found great happiness. Unbeknownst to me, it was there.
Wow. That's really inspiring. Thank you for sharing that story. Now you've reset the button, you're in the monastery. Can you tell us a little bit about, you know, how did that change your worldview and your personal philosophy? Are there any key teachings or experiences that stood out to you?
Absolutely. Again, there's one word that pops up. It's a little more positive, a lot more positive than the word suffering, but it's another word that starts with S, and that is service. The primary thing that I learned as a monk, and that I then, since graduating the monastery, the kind of purpose of me trying to serve others is, well, service. And this idea of not only myself serving, but inspiring and trying to incline others to cultivate a mood of service. And that is because the material world teaches us that we're the most important thing ever. And the way the mind works is that I'm the center of the world. You should serve me. Why aren't you serving me? And most of our suffering actually comes from the sense of like, I'm not you. I should be treated better. I should. All of these conceptions of I, me, and mine, happiness never comes from taking. Happiness always comes from serving. That's the primary thing that gets instilled in you as this type of Bhakti Yoga monk. Because if you could dedicate the mind to finding good, valuable people, places to serve, then you can actually live a happy life. They actually did studies on this in terms of there's different ways to measure happiness, but they took many different people from around the world and they put them together and they tested a bunch of people on different levels of happiness. And surprisingly, the happiest types of individuals in the world were new moms, even if they had kids before, even if they already have children, but they had some form of either an infant, new baby, young child, whatever the case might be, which is very counterintuitive because the baby don't do nothing for mom. Now, every mom hearing this goes, "No, you don't understand. My baby does so much for you." Yes, I understand. I get that. But the baby does not actually do anything for you. The happiness you feel is actually serving the baby. So
Mm-hmm.
how is it possible that the happiest people in the world are getting nothing in exchange other than a couple of smirks and some very subtle uncommunicated gestures of love? Why? Because service is actually what provides us happiness. Whereas the more that we take, the more that we are building up this sense of I, me, and mine. The false ego says, yes, I am the most important thing in the world. But if we can actually break out of that cycle and start to serve, and then ultimately turn ourselves in a direction towards the source of consciousness, divinity, whatever name. I mean, there's higher powers, just the highest of the power. Pick a name. That's how I like to say it. If you don't believe in higher power, go out in the sun for enough hours. You'll believe in higher power. Go to the middle ocean. Tell me there's no higher powers. There's powers higher than us. It's like whatever that highest power, that source of consciousness, serving there. The Vedic conception, the conception according to the ancient wisdom literatures from ancient India, is if you water the roots of the tree, the whole tree gets nourished. So the same way as if you could serve divinity and serve all other living entities, then inevitably you yourself will be satisfied automatically.
Mm. I love that explanation. One thing that came to mind is, sometimes when we choose the path of service, I mean, I see it with a lot of people not even choosing that path, but being somebody that wants to help people. We sometimes take on those problems, or the boundaries get blurred. We start to, there's another S word, sacrifice, right? Did the monastery, was your time there, basically, what did you learn in being of service to people and how to draw that line or how to draw that boundary and not taking on other people's stuff? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, how to be of service, not a doormat. That's
Yes,
like a good.
yes.
That's like a good quote. It's like, how to be of service, not be a doormat. Yeah, there's the primary differentiation is to whom you are serving functionally. You use this word sacrifice,
Hmm.
and I like it because one of the words that we get very comfortable with in the monastery is austerity or penance. In other words, temporary discomfort or temporary sacrifice for a long term benefit. And an example I like to give is people who work out are enduring some type of austerity. It's like you're working out the muscle and it's like, ow, 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 this sucks. I don't want to do this. I mean, sure, maybe there's some crazy
No
people.
pain, no gain, right?
Some people do like the pain, but that's not me. But it's like, ow, ow, exactly. And then eventually you get gain. You do this enough times and you get a muscle. And you know what I mean? The muscle increases in size and strength. And so in the same way, if we are taking our time and sacrificing our time, energy, and resources in a way that's going to ultimately provide us happiness, or I don't even like the word happiness because it's a little too general. I would say a type of deep satisfaction and contentment in life, which inevitably you'll actually have some sustainable happiness in that space. Whatever those practices of sacrifice are the ones that are worth doing. Whereas the other types of sacrifices, there's a lot there that might have some benefit, might not. We're not so interested in. Like sometimes people relate things. Monks are like, well, people ask me, "Oh, did you like have people just like punch you in the stomach until you talk, or you're like we're like kicking trees until you shouldn't?" I was like, I was not a Shaolin monk. However, I always thought Shaolin monks are cool. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know that I like MMA, but that's a little hardcore for me. So, um, funny enough, people all the time would stop me, like, "You're a Shaolin monk?" I said, "Depends if you want to fight with me or not. If you do, I am a Shaolin monk. If not, no." Because Shaolin monks are experts in martial arts. And so usually we think monks do all these crazy austerities. Like, did you fast for 10 days? Did you sit out in the, did you submerge your body in cold? I was like, no, all those things. Maybe there's some benefits, maybe there's some physiological results, but like, no, the purpose is it's sacrificing ourselves in such a way now that's not just going to bring myself strength and satisfaction. I want to serve others while simultaneously maintaining myself. It doesn't have to be this or that. And so the primary way to make that differentiation in terms of like, okay, I'm doing a good service and good sacrifice, or I'm taking a beating that I really don't want to be taking, or whatever the case might be, is again, it comes down to the intention and the motivation behind it. And is that is, am I doing this for myself, or am I doing this for a greater cause? Or am I doing this
Mm,
for divinity? Am I doing this for other living entities? Typically, that type of austerity in terms of the body, like, yeah, going to the Himalayan mountains. And I mean, I lived in India and like been to the Himalayas, but like go and just wearing a loincloth and sitting there and freezing and practicing your breath work. It's like, yeah, that's cool, but who does that save? Moi,
mhm,
me. The whole purpose of bhakti is based on service to others. Service is an act. Service is not a thing. It's not stable. A service means I serve. Who am I serving? I can't serve an inanimate object. So the whole idea is, what are those practices I can do that not only naturally take care of me and control my mind and senses, but I can also impact the lives of others. Example being, say, meditation, which is very much for me, but then you do it in such a way that you can go out and teach meditation to others. Or anyway, many different examples there, but the primary differentiator is the intention behind it. Am I doing it for me? If so, it's going to get dissatisfying. That's why 0.00000000001% of the world will ever do any of these crazy kinds of austerities anyway. But anyone in any condition of life can actually cultivate a life of service and then be happy
mm.
about it, not be miserable, their body falling apart.
That makes sense. I'm also wondering what actually triggered your transition out of the monastery life, and also what inspired you to become a business owner?
Yeah, well, hmm, what made me transition from being a monk and graduating the monastery was I really wanted to try pizza for the first time in my life. No, I'm kidding. I wanted to try to say that with a straight face, but no, there's no time commitment. Sometimes people are like, oh, did you get like a bachelor's in monastic living? Not quite. The idea is your teachers regularly check in. And then once it gets to a point where it's kind of like, okay, you've gone through your student studies, it's now time to transition into being a quote unquote normal person. Hence the hair. See, this isn't orange. This is a polo. Becoming integrated into this world, because the whole point of being a monk, and 99% of monks are student monks. Very few go on to be lifelong celibate monks. Some do, but most transition into what we call householder life. The whole point of being a student monk is to learn the basics and the tenets so that you can go back in this world and then share them and teach them in such a way as to actually contribute to society. And again, instead of being a taker, which all you got to do is take one economics class. There's not enough. Get what you can get. It's like, wrong. There's no scarcity here. And rather, you have this mood of contribution. And so it got to the point where my teachers were like, I think it's time. I was like, I think it's time too. you know, Everyone always has their capacity with what type of austerities you can do for, you know, any given time. And so, yeah, after multiple years, it got to the point where it was like, okay, it's time. It's time to start to integrate. And what happened was the first 2 years outside of the monastery were really tough in the form of, in the name of service, I was being a doormat. I was running around the world like a headless chicken serving, but my health was deteriorating from all the travel and just the lack of personal support. I was living off donations that I thought, oh, I'm just gonna ask people to give. And so I was making, $15,000 to $18,000 a year, 15 the first, 18 the second. And long story short, ecstasy isn't the word I'd use in terms of my physical and mental capacities. I was happy from the service. I can sincerely say I don't regret a second of the contribution, but I was doing it in a way that I was actually neglecting myself. A line I often like to say is, a drowning lifeguard can't save any, but a strong lifeguard can save many. And this idea being that I, in the name of service, was depleting myself, which actually isn't of service to really myself or anyone else. And, not taking care of myself and all of the basic needs of life. After about 2 years of that and exhausting myself, it got to the point where I was just like, this ain't working. I have to, something's got to shift. Something's got to change. So without going into all the details, I first was like, what can I do to make money? Like, I was just like, what can I monetize? There's some things I know how to do, and what can I monetize? And there's a couple of different things. I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner, which is functionally a Eastern medicine practitioner. And I was like, okay, I could do that. I could teach meditation. I was like, oh, I also, I've been in India. I could take a pilgrimage to India. So I was like considering all these pieces, and I just pretty much picked one, and that was an India pilgrimage. And I was like, I want to run an India pilgrimage and make money, and I'm going to charge big boy bucks. And, with, again, saving you a lot of mental strain to hear how my mind fought with me. But eventually I was like, let's do it. And for the first time in my life, I actually made some real money. It sold out, my first ever India pilgrimage. And for the first time in my life, I made about $20,000 for 2 weeks of work, which was more than I made in more than a year. And at that point, something in my mind shifted. And I noticed the people who came with me, they had learned far more of what I had to give than anyone else. Why? Because we value three things where we spend our time, our money, and our attention. If you want to know what somebody values, see where they're spending their time, money, and their attention. That's what somebody actually values. And so I learned I need to charge people something. Even if it's not in the form of money, there needs to be some, going back to that word, sacrifice, that's going to force them to actually pay attention to what we're doing. So something in my mind shifted. I went, oh, I'm the only reason I'm not successful. Duh. It's not karma. It's not destiny. No, I just haven't made the decisions I need, learn the things I need to do. And that's when I started my business journey of, okay, how can I help heal as many people that I have the capacity to? And then in the first year, as if magically, made over 6 figures with just my Ayurvedic business and retreats and all that. And then we doubled the next year, and then it doubled, and going on. And then after some time doing that, most of my friends who are also wellness providers or coaches or teachers, everyone said, Madhu, how are you doing this? Like, I'm broke. Like, I thought we were like, us healers supposed to be broke. I was like, no. So eventually I just wound up talking, like helping others with their business. And then it just, about 2.5 years ago, it was just a no brainer for me to just switch from helping with the direct healing, which is still a part of what I do. But
Yeah.
if I could only help, say, 30 people at a time with my programs, which means I'm only helping 30 people. But now if I'm helping helpers, now if I help 30 people, but each of them can go help 30, and in this way, kind of exponentially growing my impact. And so that's why about 2.5 years ago, I transitioned, just to pretty much show people, hey, this is how I made the, multiple 6-figure business online. And if I can do it, if a monk with no formal education that graduated high school at 16, because I want to get the heck out of that place, if he could do it, believe me, you can do it too.
Right? I mean, there's a real thing about energetic exchange, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you went from having a poor health and just giving everything you had and just taking donations to building an incredible 6-figure, 7-figure business. And then the other thing that kind of popped into my head is it's real when I used to give stuff away, like people would not show up. But then when I started to charge a premium, people would show up and really pay attention. You're so right about, where the money is and seeing where people's attention is. What were the three things again?
Yeah. So time. And
Time,
so I always like say, look at somebody's schedule. Money, which is where, like, look at their bank account, and then attention. It's like, look where their eyes are.
right.
It's this idea, because even sometimes people say time and attention are the same, but it's not. Someone could be in a place, like how many people are at work, but they're actually scrolling, or they're actually whatever it might be. So
Exactly.
time, money, and attention.
Yeah, totally. I can totally see that. I would like to know, how have you integrated the principles and teachings from your time as a monk into your business practices?
Well, I found that what I learned in terms of being a successful, say, monk, which really just means learning to control the mind and the senses, the only way anyone in this world attains success in anything is by controlling the mind and the senses, by a little bit of discipline. Discipline itself is not enough, but the practice of taking time every day to dedicate to the habits and behaviors that are going to ultimately provide me success in any area is the framework that's going to make me successful in any other area. Let me just say that in a slightly different way. And that is that being a monk, there's certain things you commit to doing every single day, whatever the case might be in terms of the time you wake up, the amount of meditation that you're doing, the amount of service that you're doing. There's As a monk, you get engaged according to your psychophysical nature. So some people, they just wanted to cook. So they would cook and they would cook for everyone else. They would cook and distribute the food to the masses. Or, some people they're more philosophers. They want to study and give classes. And I really like that myself. Or some were more outward and they wanted to go to colleges and teach this to them. Or, whatever somebody wanted to do, they'd be engaged accordingly. But the idea still is that they would do that consistently. And the primary thing you learn there is if you just be consistent, you're going to get good, whether you like it or not. Anything you do on a daily basis, you'll get good at. I always tell people, it's like, do you want to become an expert social media consumer? And if they're like, no, I don't, I'm like, well, guess what? You'll become an expert at every swipe. It's like every swipe, that muscle gets a little stronger. Now, swipe a little, no problem. I mean, I'm a big fan of stand-up comedy. So if I open up my phone right now, I'm a big fan of listening to some funny stuff. But I mean to say more of whatever we're doing on a daily basis consistently, you're going to get great at, whether you want to or not. And so if we take those principles and apply them to business, the cool thing with making money is it's just math. And when I learned this, like my whole mind exploded. I was like, oh, it's just math. It's just you help X amount of people with X amount of time in a particular kind of way, and then you charge them X amount, and then you just do that over and over, and then you create a system out of it. And that might sound overly simplified, but I don't believe it actually is. I believe it actually is very simple, is what I mean to say. And as soon as I learned, there's just a few things I need to do every day to become successful. Then before I knew it, that was there. And the routine was already there. The meditation was already there. The health practices were already there. So for me, I really just had to fill in the work portion, the career portion. And the cool thing with my business is there's only a handful of metrics I need to commit to, be it send X amount of messages every day, or I'm not getting all the details. It's like, there's only a few things to commit to. And once you commit to doing them, you will be successful. It's just a matter of time. I don't want to be a future teller, but I do want to be I don't want to be able to know exactly when things will happen, because I'm never going to. So why have that desire? But I do know if I do X, Y, and Z, it's just a matter of time. Eventually, I will be successful. So that's the primary way it gets translated over to business, or frankly, health or relationships or whatever other important aspects of life.
You mentioned, as a monk, you had to do certain things every single day. I'm just curious, w- how often do you still meditate, and how long is your meditations?
Yeah, every day. Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing more important to me every day than my meditation. I mean, I love my wife, but she would agree. She'd be like, yeah, you go, like, Madhu, go meditate. Like, there's nothing in my life more important than my meditation. Um, the mind can either be the best friend or the biggest enemy. And if we're not on a daily basis making arrangements to have the mind actually cooperate, what can we advance in? Like, everything is going to be a struggle. And so, taking time every single day to meditate. I'm a little shy to share how much, but bare minimum of an hour and a half, absolute, like, bare minimum. And in the monastery, yeah, it's at least an hour and a half to 2 hours, like private meditation. That's what I've carried over. I don't do so much. It's more occasional with the group meditations, but at least once a week or something like that. And there's a night and day difference if I do and I don't. And
Mhm.
people know it's like, let's just say if I'm sick or whatever it might be, and my morning program isn't as stable as it typically is, or whatever the case might be.
Mhm.
I feel the difference. My wife sees it. Everyone around me sees the difference. People are like, huh, you're a little wild today, huh, Madhu? And so there's no question if, as long as I have an opinion in the matter, if I'm going to spend the rest of my life with this particular meditation that I've developed, no question.
That's really encouraging because I meditate a lot and I can definitely feel the difference. And every now and again, when I don't meditate, like today, I haven't meditated yet. And I've,
You
I
like
had
feel it,
other
right?
things come up, but I will be later today. I can feel it. And so I always tell myself, like, I wonder when I'm going to get to the point where I can't feel it. Like I have enough saved up in the bank that it can just spill over. And it just doesn't seem to work that way because I can meditate 3 hours yesterday and miss today and still feel off. But then maybe tomorrow I'll meditate only 15 minutes and I'm still like, I'm okay. Like I'm a lot more grounded, if that makes sense. I think that that's like a continuous practice. And it's not like you can meditate for X amount of time and you're going to be good for X amount of time.
Yeah.
It's literally an everyday practice.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of minimums. It's like I like your point where it's like, yeah, I just know, okay, 15 minutes, it's going to change the trajectory of my
Yeah.
whole day. And so it's like, okay, and I'm a big fan of everyone just finding like what's something you can commit to every single day, no matter what. And I say you have to have a house on fire desire. So it's like house is on fire, but you're like, it's almost bedtime though. Like I got to go knock out my meditation or
Yeah.
whatever the kind of non-negotiables are, and committing to them because, as you so eloquently expressed, there's nothing quite as powerful and potent as just being consistent and doing it on a daily basis, even if it's not the ideal, even if you want to do 3 hours every day, but it's just 15 minutes. Like that's
Yeah.
who in the world meditates 15 minutes every day. You're now already ahead of the game and practically most statistics.
Yeah. No, it's true. And I can definitely feel the shift when I do it. Are there specific Vedic principles that you believe are fundamental to your personal success?
Absolutely. I would say there's two currents to learn how to navigate. There's two types of currents in this world. And current literally meaning like there's directions and currents and movements and energetics that move in particular directions. And if you could learn to work with nature, um, as opposed to swimming against the current, which don't try this at home, folks, it's hard. If you can learn how to work with the current, everything else is going to become far more expedited per se. Everything else is going to move and cruise at a much more stable pace, we could say. And that's really where we get more into like the philosophical and theological conception. And that is, philosophy is really simple. There's two things. It's me, I'm a unit of consciousness. The way I know I'm a unit of consciousness is because I can ask myself if I'm a unit of consciousness. I can consciously conceive of a question like that, which means I am an entity, I am a being. There's some realness and reality to me and my sense of self. The Vedic conception does say that we call it a soul or an atma. You're a soul and you have a body, aka biomechanical robot, a human body that you, the real soul, are driving around, which is why you say this is my hand or my hair. You don't say I hand or I hair, because if something changes with the body, which it does it every second, every single cell in your body is changing. Every 7 years, every cell in your body is completely changed. You're reincarnating every 7 years. So who is the real you driving around that body that's constantly changing? That's the self, or the unit of consciousness. So that's one thing we know is for sure. The other is that there is something that exists outside of my reality. And that's why if both you and I point to the same thing and I say, what is that? You and I will both indicate the same thing. Why? Because you and I both perceive something that exists in reality. Now, is it temporary? Yeah, everything we see is, but it still exists at least for some time. So we know there's at least two things, and that comprises a philosophy. That means I'm a unit of consciousness, and there's other unit of consciousnesses, aka sentient beings, and that there's matter that we're in. There is matter or nature that we're in. And then if you get thinking long enough, you're like, wait, where do these things come from? And then you have to bring in a third principle, which turns a philosophy into a theology, which is the divine principle, which is, wait, where does nature come from? Does it come from big bangs? That's a decent theory. but it's nothing but a theory. It's like, if I have the choice to choose between there's a divine eternal source and there's eternal life, or there's a big bang and you die at the end of your life, nothing happens. You mean we're never going to know one way or the other and we get to choose one or the other? Yeah. I'm definitely not going to go with the everything ending when the lights go out. I'm definitely going to opt for the, anyway, there's a whole other point we can get into, but we have to bring in there's the source of those things, the source of consciousness, the source of nature. Where do those come from? So you've got these three. So me, I, us are the units of consciousness. And then we have these other two things. If we can learn how to work with the currents of nature and divinity, we can then use those currents to expedite our movements. Examples being stuff that we can tangibly see. Let's look at nature, moving with the currents of nature. When the sun goes up, use goes up. When the sun goes down, use goes down. The idea is only a few years ago, artificial light became a thing. And, prior to that, though, forever, everywhere, sun goes down. It's time, sun comes up. Okay. Or whatever the case may be. There's so many of these functions of nature that if you could just learn how to work with them, right? Wake with the sun, sleep after it goes down, depending where you're at in the world. Obviously there's modifications, but in terms of being general principles here, if you learn how to work with that, you're going to feel a difference.
Yeah,
Just like
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I you can even attribute that to the seasons, right? I mean, it's
100%.
starting to get darker. We're starting to go more into hibernation mode. In spring, you're starting to come out, you're starting new things, new beginnings. I did that last year and what a difference.
Mm.
And then I started intuitive eating also, and eating with the seasons. I mean, you naturally do that based on what's at the market, right? But there's so many different ways to do that. I love that.
I mean, what you just gave are such perfect examples of working with the currents of nature, right? It's like this Mother Earth gives me the food in my area that I need to live in this area. What random, not random, right? It's like it's magical. It's such a gift. It's such a divine gift. And so, those great examples that you gave in terms of like working with nature, those are some examples. It's like step number one, figure out how to work with the currents of nature, the laws of the universe per se. The other is the laws of divinity. And according to the Vedic conception, this was probably the thing that inspired me the most to move in the direction of like Bhakti Yoga tradition. I mean, it was also fascinating that it's the oldest written literatures in the world. The Vedas we currently have the oldest written literature forms. There's hieroglyphs that predate it, but they were not in literature form. We still know what they mean, but now 5,000 years later, we can still read the exact same thing that was written down. It's pretty. So that was there. What to speak of still being the vastest philosophical works in the world. So those things initially inclined me, but what kept me were the contents, which specifically taught that divinity is comprised of three functions. And that is divine source is all powerful, all loving, and all knowing. And there's the way that divinity manifests is in a personal form, in a localized form, which means in the hearts of all living entities. So your heart's a little car, you're in the driver's seat, divinity is the passenger, conscience, many people call. And then there's all pervasive consciousness, Brahman, the idea that divinity is in every atom. But ultimately, when we're talking about divinity, we're talking about the personalized form, because you can't have a relationship with a jar or an inanimate object. You can only have a relationship, which is where love comes, which according to the Vedic paradigm is the most important thing, the thing that we all go for. And you don't have to convince anyone of that. It's just a given. Cultivating a relationship with divinity is cultivating a relationship with somebody who is all knowing, all loving, and all powerful. And the idea is, can an all loving divine source, let me say this, would an all-loving source want to give us all opportunities to turn towards transcendence and provide ourselves and others relief? Would an all-loving deity do? Yeah, of course. No, they're all loving. That's what they want to do. Provide us all opportunities at any time when we want to turn towards transcendence. Could an all-powerful transcendent entity do that? Yeah, because they're all powerful. They do whatever they want. Would an all-knowing entity know exactly what to give us at any given time to help us turn towards transcendence? Absolutely. So in this way, learning how to first understand the kind of tenets of what even that means with divinity, as opposed to kind of like, I mean, I don't mind the woo, but like it could just be like divinity. It's like, what does that mean? Like, I like that everything was very delineated. Like, okay, this is what we're talking about here. And then working with that means that you are accessing the divine principle, which means there's no longer scarcity. If you look at things from a material lens, we see that, okay, there's limited resources. You know, if I take more, you get less. You take more, I get less. And this competitive mindset is based around ego. If we simply understand that there is no limits, divinity, there's no limitation to divinity and what's accessible to me, nor you, nor anyone else. We are now using, we could tap into that unlimited source. So it's like whatever we need, we can welcome that into our life without having to create all these artificial mental impositions that keep us from it. Well, maybe I don't need it. Maybe I don't want, maybe it's not good. No, it's like we can now welcome in whatever we want into our life that's going to move us in a positive direction. If it doesn't necessarily come, that's fine, because we have faith. Like, would an all loving deity do everything that's best for us? Yeah. Would an all powerful one be able to? Yep. Would an all knowing one know exactly what's best? Yep. Cool. That's convenient. So in this way, developing that kind of conception of divinity and learning how can I use that type of current to expedite myself. Those are like the two areas. It's a, you know, kind of long answers to a short question, but those are the two kind of currents that if you learn to work with, now it's like everything's on cruise control per se. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard people say, you have to go with the flow, you have to be in flow, but the way that you described it and having concrete examples really allows me to kind of see how to implement that into my life. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for doing such a labor of love, keeping the lights on in a studio like this so that we can actually have these conversations. People don't know how much time, energy, and attention it takes to keep insightful podcasts like what you're offering going. And it's so commendable. And I so
Thank
much
you.
appreciation for it.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I have just a couple more questions for you, and I'm really interested in this one because this one has hit me personally. As a holistic health and lifestyle coach, how do you see the relationship between one's well being and their professional success?
Yeah. It's like, how important is it for the left leg to work if you want to walk? You know, I got a really strong right leg. I could just hop, right? Um, there is no career if there's no health. One might argue to say this isn't quite as sound, but one might also say there's no career without health either. Or excuse me, there's no career without health. That's duh. Your body falls apart. You can't do nothing. One might also argue to say there's no health without a career in such a way of like you got to maintain yourself. And like as much as we'd like the idea to say that health is free, and somebody says you could just go pick vegetables off of your backyard, I'm like, yes, you can, but you still got to buy some seeds. You still got to buy a roof. Like there's still going to be expenses, no matter how simple you make life to be. And so the way that I would put attention on balancing holistic health, or I would say your health, and I'm putting the holistic flair because better you do it the way your body intended, and balancing that with career and how interdependent they are, is that if you are not maintaining yourself with some type of income, you're not going to be able to afford a healthy lifestyle. Similarly, if you're not doing what it takes to maintain body and soul together by keeping yourself healthy, then how can you go and maintain yourself? So the idea being that just as it's very hard to walk on one leg, it's possible. You can do it. People do it. We see it all the time. People are like outrageously successful in one area of their life, but like miserably unhealthy, or vice versa. The healthiest person in the world hardly pay the bills. It's like that's possible, but it's so much more difficult. And the emphasis I'd like to give here is that people who have learned, which is most of us from young age, we learn that there's only so much agency we have. And there's so much outside of our control, which is true. But that there's so much that you have to just tolerate and deal with and suffer. May say, you know what, these are the cards I've been dealt with. I'd love to get healthier, but if I don't spend 70 hours a week with my work, like everything's going to fall apart. Or on the other end, somebody says, if I stop by 8 hours of running every day, I died, whatever it might be. And so the crux of the issue really is thinking it's a this or that. And the modified mindset perspective I would offer for those who feel like, oh, how do I, which is more important is like, how do we do both? Because both are available. And if you think they're not available right now, I might offer you another additional mindset change, and that is to stop accepting the unprovable things that your mind presents you. Like, I would eat healthier, but I can't afford it. No, when you say I can't afford it, that means I'm not willing to figure out what I have to learn and do to afford it. That just means it's not important enough. Just accept that. I don't have any issue. There's no judgment there. Like all the time, I even have people. I don't know. I speak with so many people on a monthly basis, and a lot of them. They're just like, I see what it takes to like run my business. I don't know. I'm like, cool, no problem. Kudos for you accepting that. Now we can figure out, like, great. Most people don't run their own business. Let's find a good business to put you part of. And then it's like but there's some compromise. There's compromise being a business owner, compromise not being a business owner, whatever the case might be. And so there's no judgment in terms of if somebody doesn't want to do what it takes to be able to afford a healthier lifestyle, as long as somebody admits that and takes responsibility, because that we could work with. Like, yes, I am not willing to do what it takes to learn how to make more money so that I can afford a healthier lifestyle. But then we can increase the desire. If we accept that and take personal responsibility, as opposed to putting blame out and saying, oh, I would live healthier, but it's the government. The government's not letting me be healthy. I would be healthier, but it's my parents, my siblings. Let me tell you about my friends. I would be healthy, but my friends. And in this way, we're just giving our personal responsibility left and right. If we just say, hey, you know what? Life's never going to be perfectly conducive. I'm either willing or unwilling to do what it takes to make the change. From there, the only question is, how do we increase the desire to actually do it? So both are essential, both are important. And if we could start with taking personal responsibility of our situation, then the next step is, how do I cultivate the desire? And there's a couple of different processes that I use regularly for that.
For someone just starting their journey, blending spirituality and business, what piece of advice would you give them to ensure they remain authentic to their values while also achieving financial success?
Yeah, know that we should start with a preface that one can only become successful if they are maintaining integrity with their values. Another further caveat is, hopefully they're good values. We talk about integrity a lot, but integrity is not all. We need integrity and good values. An example might be a jihadist has a lot of integrity if they go and blow up a lot of people, because that's their value system. I'm not a fan of that value system. Or, I can give you about 30 examples of value systems I'm just like, that make no sense to me, And so first, have some good values, and you can kind of measure them in relationship to those two currents of how nature works and how divinity works, and kind of comparing, like, I'm the center of the world and I'm the most important thing. That doesn't fit in this paradigm. I don't get rid of it. Okay, I guess I'm actually here to serve and not just improve my life, but everyone else's too. And you kind of make these modifications. Have a good value system, be in integrity with that, and one can only be successful in that way. If someone has this misconception that I can be successful while giving up my values, it's unsustainable fuel. Just start a timer and wait until you get to the point where you go, this sucks, I hate this, because it's coming. As soon as we compromise those most important values, we're going to notice every area of our success is going to start to go and dwindle. And that's even why you find that some people can lose everything and still be totally happy, because they still have their integrity, and then they can just go start from scratch. They did it once, they'll do it again. Maybe they've done it 10 times. Entrepreneurs typically do that. I know I failed more times than I succeeded. And so I just happened to, the few times I did succeed, it worked, And so in the same way, know that with absolute certainty, the only way you actually will be successful sustainably is by maintaining integrity with high quality values.
Well, it looks like we're at time. I have so many other questions for you, but maybe we can schedule another time for us. I would like to understand, like, if when do people actually come to see you? Like, why would I sign up for your coaching business? Can you tell us a little bit about your offerings?
Sure. Well, in brief, there's two primary buckets that we do. There's two primary things. One is the mindset portion. We have what I've developed called the monk mindset method, which is learning how to train your mind to be successful so that no matter what happens, you're winning. Like you're winning, you know what I mean? You are happy, you're content, you're satisfied, and things are moving in a positive direction. Specifically around health, career, relationships, and then spirituality. It's like we have models based just around creating a strong, bulletproof mindset approach. The other bucket is actually the systems and strategies for creating sustainable online. It doesn't have to just be online businesses, but most of the people we work with are primarily online. And I help mostly wellness professionals and coaches and practitioners grow pretty much in the same way I did, where they are helping people, but they want to help more and they want to make more money and more impact and change more lives while doing it. And so I show them how to scale to first six figures if they're not there yet, and then multiple six, and eventually to seven. And that's more in the strategic portion, but we always do both. So again, people who already have something that's cruising, we've helped people from scratch, of course, but we get much further with those who already have a, like, this is what I do and I'm good at it. I just need help with the sales, the marketing, blah, blah, blah. And the method we have is called conscious closing systems, which means how to sell without selling your soul, how to sell in such a way that you're never compromising your values, you're never manipulating or coercing or using coercion tactics. Most sales models are based off how do I scare you into taking action, which no one's happy in that approach. Rather, we do abundance frameworks, which means how do you inspire people to their potential and then give them a logical step ladder to their success. And so those are the two primary things that we do. So most people who come to us, they're stressed, overwhelmed, they're either overworking or not spending enough time in doing the things they actually want to be doing, or they're just ready, even if they're happy. And everyone needs a little mindset update, but even if their mind's cooperating, mostly they just want to scale. They're ready to make more money, which always converts to more impact. Money motivation doesn't go a long way, but impact motivation inevitably will cause more money to come in.
Yeah, I love that. And where can people find you?
Yeah, on all platforms at madhu.life. That's madhu.life, madhu.life. And on any platform you can find me and just drop me a message, drop me a DM, or drop me an email, info@madhu.life if you prefer email, or my website, madhu.life. Anywhere you go. And just there's always going to be a contact button. And all you ever have to do is send me the word monk, MONK, and or send me anything else. Send me a reflection from what you heard today that you'd like to keep, whatever it might be. And if you send me monk, we have a free group, Monk Mindset Mastery, which is just for trying to share these. I believe in always leading with generosity. If we could just share and serve, everyone's going to be happier. I attribute all of my success to just the mood of trying to help and contribute. And so we have free groups which are based around, we've got tons of free courses around the mindset, even around strategy as well. We've got a great community of other holistic practitioners and healers and coaches that are just changing people's lives. So if you send me the word monk, I'll give you access to that completely free community. That's probably the best step for most people because, like I said, all of our free, we have like most of our materials there, and it's just go ahead, consume it, and if at some point we can ever serve people more than that, we're, as long as we have capacity, we're open to it.
Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom today, and also sharing the free offering that you have so that people can take a little bit of a taste of what you have to offer in this world. I highly encourage our listeners to let us know what you thought about this episode, any reflections that you might have down below. Like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next week.